got my share, man. I swear.
At the time, I didn't think it was necessary.
Well, you were wrong about that.
All right. Make it up next week.
Thank you, Nacho. Connector.
That'll be all. You can go.
Who works for who? Huh?
What are you going to do?
If it's your first time here, hey, my name is Quentin. I'm a writer, teacher, and sometimes performer. Better Call Saul, the spin-off and prequel to Breaking Bad. Better Call Saul follows the moral decline of lawyer Jimmy McGill, as we witness how people in his life, his tendency to scam, and the inaccessible world of law morph him into the criminal lawyer persona of Saul Goodman, who we first meet in Breaking Bad during its second season. It's time yet again to analyze the complex characters and precise artistry of Better Call Saul. Before we get into it, I wanted to thank each and every one of you who watched my last video essay examining Mike and Jimmy's lack of friendship. I've begun to monetize/rebrand the channel thanks to the increased viewership, but these video essays often can't be monetized due to the clips I use, so my Patreon is linked below if you want to support me and get some perks. Or hey, why not throw me a tip by clicking on the 3 dots below, or become a member of the channel and earn some badges? Any amount you can afford helps a lot. Thank you so much. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Today we're going to be comparing two of the most tragic yet honorable characters in the Breaking Bad/Better Call Saul universe by exploring and comparing the use of color in their final arcs, Ignacio Nacho Varga and Howard Hamlin. While Nacho and Howard never interact in the series, they do have a similar arc and a similar level of moral integrity in Better Call Saul, especially in the final season. It's interesting because both Nacho and Howard were originally written to be antagonists, and are presented in that way during most of the first season. Nacho as the quiet, intimidating drug trafficker, complicating matters with Jimmy and the Kettlemans, and Howard as the stiff, arrogant boss, denying Jimmy yet again from working as a lawyer at Hamlin, and McGill. Gradually, Nacho and Howard are revealed to possess more depth than their introductions suggest. Nacho and Howard both got caught in the middle of a dangerous feud they wanted no part of, yet still attempted to look out for those they cared about, even if it meant personal sacrifice. And yes, that even includes Howard in an undeserved and unintentional way. Did I mention that there would be spoilers? In this analysis, I'm going to analyze both Nacho and Howard's final arcs in Season 6, and the symbolic use of color to accentuate the change in their characters. Through the use of color, Nacho goes from a state of chaos/danger to attaining stability/safety for his father, and Howard goes from a state of stability/safety to chaos/danger, as initiated by Kim and Jimmy, ultimately demonstrating their mirrored tragic arcs, but with different results. Now, I was originally going to do a character summary of Nacho and Howard to provide context to my analysis, but at this point, if you're watching any of my video essays, you've probably seen the entire series and are familiar enough with Nacho and Howard's backgrounds. If you haven't finished the series, then I would suggest coming back to this video essay later. Major spoilers ahead. Viewer beware. So let's talk about the show's use of color before we get into it. What are the major colors associated with Nacho and Howard as characters? Just as in Breaking Bad, color and other symbolic elements serve to both tell the story and accentuate recurring motifs, themes, or ideas. It would take another video essay, maybe even two, to fully decipher the meanings associated with various colors in Better Call Saul, especially when it comes to the characters' clothing, and not to mention colors used in the show's settings or compositions. But we can safely say that characters dressed in blue or more cooler tones generally belong to the legal side of the show, representing safety and stability. Howard is dressed in shades of blue for the vast majority of the show. Characters dressed in red or more warmer tones generally belong to the criminal side of the show, in particular cartel members, representing chaos and danger. Nacho is dressed in shades of red for the vast majority of the show. This also reminds me of all the red exit signs placed intentionally in scenes where characters are in physical or psychological danger and should exit but don't quite realize it. Both yellow and gold mainly represent decay, corruption, and wealth. For example, the yellow color of Howard's Namaste license plate, or the gold chains worn by Nacho. And you know I'm gonna bring both of those examples up again. Brown is a mix of red, blue, and yellow, which in my interpretation represents moral ambiguity, like Jimmy's brown suit in the first season, or even Stacy's brown coat. Finally, white is the absence of color, which in my interpretation is meant to symbolize a blank slate for a character or situation, a chance to choose goodness, badness, or a little bit of both. Now let's get to analyzing the colors associated with Nacho and Howard's final arcs in Season 6, starting with Nacho. Nacho Varga, being a member of the drug world and working for the Salamancas, is primarily dressed in different shades of red, with hints of gold through his jewelry. Red represents criminality, chaos, and danger, with Nacho having notable moments of being threatening and dangerous. Nacho often wears gold chains and a gold wristwatch, furthering his relation to the criminal world as gold represents wealth. Nacho may don a lot of red to symbolize his criminality, along with gold to symbolize the wealth gained from the criminality, but gold also represents decay, hinting at Nacho's decaying attitude towards what he's doing, along with the potential decay of Nacho's relationship with his father Manuel if Nacho doesn't get out of the game. Beginning in Season 4, we start to see him wearing less red and gold, and more black instead. I haven't completely decided what black represents in the series, but it seems to be used when characters are in negative emotional states like grief, or when characters are about to break bad, since many characters from the criminal world wear black, like Gus for example. In Nacho's case, this change in the color of his typical clothing coincides with Hector having a stroke and Gus blackmailing Nacho. Hey, there you go, blackmail. Just when he thought he was going to get out, he's pulled back in, so perhaps black is meant to represent his mourning the failed opportunity to get him and his dad out of this world. As Nacho continues to work for Gus by working against the Salamancas, his attire oscillates between red, black, gold jewelry, and even some gray. Gray being associated mostly with the legal side of the show. His wardrobe becomes a little bit more varied, with the criminal colors being almost like a costume now. Nacho really isn't a bad guy, maybe at one point he was, but he has to pretend to continue being one to get himself and his dad out of the game. But let's look at Nacho's colors during his final arc of the series. In Season 6, Episode 1, Wine and Roses, Nacho escapes after the attempted assassination of Lalo, donning a dark red shirt for the final time in the series, which is fitting considering his being in deeper with the criminal world after getting caught between Gus and the Salamancas. Or Lalo rather. The color of his shirt is very close to the color of red wine, red roses, and blood. So this shirt is significant enough to have a loose connection to the episode's title, Wine and Roses. To me, this red shirt is the peak of Nacho's reluctant, performative criminality. He has to double down on his criminality to save the life of his father, which is a pretty common theme in Better Call Saul, with Mike and Jimmy also doubling down on their criminality after trying to stop. Once Nacho makes it to the motel, the red shirt is replaced by a white t-shirt in Episode 2, Carrot and Stick. The white t-shirt not only being a practical change of clothing after running around for so long, but white represents a blank slate, a lack of color. Nacho is at a bit of a crossroads here. He could flee on his own, go his own way as he tells Don Eladio, and ignore Gus's wishes, or he could listen to Gus's crew and keep a low profile to evade the Salamancas until he's told what to do next. He chooses the latter since obviously not going along with Gus puts Manuel at risk. Nacho is no longer the bad guy donning red and gold, nor the good guy donning blue. He lacks any color at this point in his arc, almost as if he's experiencing a rebirth, a blank page in his story. But that changes in the next scene with Nacho. He's still wearing white, but over top he has a plaid shirt. And this isn't just any average plaid shirt. The color pattern consists of white, blue, and brown. No trace of red, black, yellow, or gold. He wears it all throughout his gun battle with the Salamanca twins after they're tipped off by Juan Bolsa, who is tipped off by Gus, which Nacho had figured out on his own. Such a smart character. The plaid shirt is really striking on Nacho, going against every other article of clothing we've seen him wear. the white representing Nacho's blank slate / potential for rebirth, the blue representing safety / stability, and the brown representing moral ambiguity. All three colors are intertwined, as if Nacho has the opportunity to choose some goodness by saving his dad, the blue color. He's in a space of rebirth with the potential to make different choices, the white color, and yet he has a history of criminality and violence preceding trying to save his dad. So he's not completely good, nor completely bad. He's now morally ambiguous, the brown color. The plaid line design of these intertwining colors further indicates how complex Nacho's life path has become. Not a singular color nor a singular line to move forward, but multiple colors intersecting through multiple lines. Nacho's fate is uncertain in this episode, both to himself and the audience. His final episode is appropriately titled Rock and Hard Place. Nacho never expected Gus to turn him in when hiding out at the motel, but now that it's happened, he's smart enough to realize that he will have to sacrifice himself in order to keep his dad safe. Fleeing from the Salamanca twins after the motel gunfire, Nacho stumbles upon a mechanic shop and is allowed to clean himself and get a fresh change of clothes. The owner provides him with a dark blue uniform, just before he makes one last phone call to his father. Nacho, knowing he has to die to save Manuel, speaks to him one last time donning a dark blue work suit, the color of stability / safety, but in a darker shade to perhaps represent Nacho's mourning of his impending death, not so much because he's afraid to die, but because dying means never getting to see his father again. While Nacho is bringing safety and stability into his orbit for the sake of Manuel, the darker tone signifies that the safety / stability comes at the expense of his own life. And now we come to Nacho's final scene, his moment of self-sacrifice. Going along with Gus's narrative for his actions, and then allowing himself to be killed in order to keep his dad safe. He arrives in the desert wearing a white dress shirt with some black line art and some red blood stains on the shirt collar. Once again, he wears white to signify having a kind of blank slate, since his behavior in this situation will determine the quality of his death and the life of his father, with the black line art perhaps representing the dark path he's been on or the grief he's experiencing, and the red blood as an extra mark of criminality, chaos, and danger. Nacho has his own idea of how to make the lie for Gus Fring and his own sacrifice work. The white shirt with black line art indicates that even though he's ended up on this dark path, he will decide exactly how he goes out. Nacho has a white blank page and is going to decide what to write on it. Before any of the cartel members can put a bullet in his head, Nacho confesses to giving Hector a stroke, which is fitting considering it was that attempted murder that landed him in the control of Gus. Of course, Nacho is reminded of this because he knows this moment of self-sacrifice will truly be the way to help his dad, as opposed to the dire results of attempting to kill Hector. Nacho, wearing white to signify this potential to act on his own, stabs Juan Bolsa in the leg with a piece of glass he hid and grabs his gun, which was not planned by Gus. Nacho makes one final choice to go out how he wants to go out, by shooting himself rather than allowing any of the cartel members to get him first. It's hard to watch, but his death does feel honorable, knowing his motivation to die was to keep his dad safe, and with that, Nacho's arc is almost complete. But what about Manuel? Is Mike true to his word that no one will harm him after Nacho's death? In the opening teaser of the episode, we see a budding blue flower where Nacho's body lied, along with the piece of glass he used to get Bolsa's gun. Blue representing safety / stability, and a flower representing the birth of new life / potential indicates that Nacho's intentional sacrifice saved Manuel. And with that, Nacho's arc is completed. He may not have been able to save himself, but he was able to save the person he loved and cared for the most. Nacho lived a life of chaos / danger, as indicated by the red in his clothes, and gradually he attained stability / safety for his dad, as indicated by the blue flower. He graduated from red to black to white, and finally to blue. Nacho broke good, you might say, even if it was in death. Howard Hamlin, being a lawyer and one of the partners at HHM, primarily dresses in shades of blue, with some green and purple occasionally showing up. blue representing stability, safety, and characters associated with the legal side of the show. His focus mainly lies with trying to keep the firm running and trying to do his best in spite of circumstances. He's beholden to maintaining HHM and doing right by his father's legacy, so he isn't the type to unnecessarily rock the boat or make a ton of enemies, mostly. This loyalty to HHM at all costs is the main reason he agrees with Chuck constantly. From Howard's perspective, he can trust Chuck's judgment since he believes Chuck has the best interests of HHM in mind, though this turns out not to be the case after Chuck's meltdown at Jimmy's bar hearing. This marks the beginning of a change in Howard's arc as he realizes Chuck has become untrustworthy and unpredictable. Very similar to the realization Nacho has that Hector is unhinged and unpredictable after he insists on using his father's shop as a front. Also, like Nacho's wardrobe, Howard doesn't drift too far away from shades of blue in the first 3 seasons. But then by season 4, Howard begins wearing more black suits with white shirts. For most of season 4, Howard mourns the death of Chuck. Not only that, but Jimmy has made him out to be responsible for Chuck taking his own life. So he's mourning the loss of a friend and a colleague who he believes he indirectly killed. Poor Howard, eh? The black in his suit jacket and pants represents his grief, and the white in his shirt represents a blank slate. His grief has caused him not to know what to do or where to go, even losing motivation to keep HHM afloat after paying out Chuck's estate. It's not until continuing his therapy and getting a bit of an ironic pep talk from Jimmy that Howard comes out the other side. When we see him in season 5, he's back to wearing his various shades of blue and seems more optimistic and energetic about his life. Throughout the rest of the series, the colors of Howard's clothing don't shift too far away from different shades of blue and other cooler tones. So let's examine the colors surrounding Howard in his final arc. His final arc isn't so much accentuated by the color of his clothes, but by the color of his environments throughout season 6. The season where Howard is undeservedly harassed by Jimmy and Kim for their own financial gain and disturbing enjoyment. For the majority of Better Call Saul, Howard is mostly seen in legal or professional settings, but in this final season we see him at home, in therapy, at a boxing gym, and at his country club. The signature blue tones of Howard's clothes, even when he's boxing, signify that he's improved psychologically since Chuck's death.
I am sorry, but have you lost your mind?
Actually, I'm as clear-headed as I've ever been in my life.
Howard feels much better internally, as symbolized by all the Hamlin to go blue, but his external circumstances are beginning to decay. In Season 6, Episode 1, Wine and Roses, Jimmy and Kim begin their plan to discredit Howard by planting fake drugs in his locker at the country club. Howard is wearing his usual blue attire, but did you notice the lighting in the locker room? It's a warm, almost gold color, similar to some of the lighting we've seen in meetings with cartel members. While yellow/gold represents wealth, which Howard does possess, both colors also represent corruption and decay. Howard isn't being personally corrupted in any way, but the external circumstances of his life start to gradually decay as Jimmy and Kim enact their plan to make him look like an untrustworthy, drug-addicted lawyer. So Howard, being immersed in this warm, gold-like lighting, simultaneously represents his privileged life while also hinting at the forthcoming decay. Finding this bag of alleged drugs in his country club locker in front of Cliff presents that ultimate dichotomy in the lighting color. Howard is wealthy enough to belong to a prestigious country club, but the country club is the very place where the first instance of his reputational decay takes place. Howard has never been seen in lighting like this, until this reputation assassination. Even in the next episode, Carrot and Stick, when the Kettlemans meet with Cliff Main on Jimmy's instructions, you can see a lamp above exuding warm, golden light. Again, Howard's reputation is in the process of decay even when he's not around, as exemplified by that subtle gold light. And there might be some Electric Jimmy representation there too. The warm gold lighting surrounding anything to do with Howard continues in Rock and Hard Place, when Huel and the Keymaker copy Howard's car key in the parking garage. Even the railing on the stairs leading down to the different levels is painted red. With the golden lighting once again and the addition of that red paint, we can sense the corruption, decay, chaos, and danger enveloping Howard's reputation. It's not that Howard is becoming dangerous or corrupt himself, but danger and corruption is closing in on him in his everyday life, as exemplified by this use of gold and red. Even Howard's Namaste license plate is yellow, as we see in the next episode, Hit and Run, again representing the ongoing decay to his reputation in spite of his personal development and material wealth. Also, when Kim is preparing to meet with Cliff so he can witness Jimmy pretending to be Howard, she's wearing a blouse with a red rose pattern with a blue tablecloth just beneath her. This signals once again that Howard's stability/safety, as represented by blue, is being undermined by chaos/danger, as represented by the red roses on Kim's shirt. Kim is indeed the mastermind behind this long con. It can also act as color symbolism for her moral decline, drifting away from blue and becoming more red. We're going to talk about Kim Wexler at some point on this channel, I promise. In Black and Blue, we see Howard's house for the very first time, and we meet Cheryl, his wife. The house is grand, opulent, and full of different yellow, gold, and brown tones. Like the lighting in the country club locker room, the yellow/gold tones of Howard's home simultaneously represent his wealth and the ongoing decay of his reputation and his marriage. The brown colors may be there to represent the moral ambiguity of Howard's character in the first few seasons. While not a villain, he also wasn't considered the good guy either. Howard was a character in the middle, doing some genuinely kind things for Jimmy to help him succeed, but also working with Chuck to undermine Jimmy. But when you consider his whole arc, there was certainly nothing he did intentionally to deserve such a plot against him. And yes, that even includes unfairly punishing Kim. In the very next scene, Howard meets with his PI to discuss what Jimmy has been up to. This scene has one very subtle detail with a nod to Nacho and the symbolism of the color blue. While Jen and Dowski updates Howard, performatively updates I should say, you can see a painting of a tree branch with blue flowers right behind him. Remember the blue flower just beginning to bud where Nacho had died? Here we have a painting of similar looking flowers blossoming on a tree branch in Howard's office. Not only does this serve to draw a connection between Nacho's blue flower and Howard's painting of a branch full of blue flowers, but this is the last time we see Howard until the Sandpiper mediation meeting. It's a final reminder of Howard's stability and safety as a lawyer, which is actively being undermined even in this scene. I think this painting firmly establishes, for my interpretation at least, that Nacho is truly the Howard of the cartel world and vice versa. The difference being that Nacho's blue flower was beginning its bloom in the physical world, whereas Howard's painting is literally lifeless compared to an actual flower. It's just a painting. Could that be some symbolic foreshadowing? Or maybe a symbolic way to connect Nacho and Howard's tragic fates in the same season? Or maybe they just like that painting. Who knows? Finally, we come to Howard's last episode, Plan and Execution, the culmination of the plot against Howard and the culmination of his arc. Going back to that painting with the blue flowers, as Howard is unknowingly laced with a caffeine-like drug, we have a reverse shot of Jen and Dowski telling him the photos are fresh out of the bath, with his head blocking the painting and a sliver of gold light above him in the window panels. The blue floral painting is blocked and out of focus, whereas the warm golden lighting is clearly seeping into the room. This is pretty fitting considering Howard's stability is about to be destroyed by the corruption of Jimmy and Kim. All throughout this season, the color gold has increasingly dominated Howard's environments. Decay has gradually been growing, not as a result of his internal feelings or character, but external corrupt forces at play. After starting to experience the drug's effects, Howard, Cliff, and Irene enter the conference room with those signature HHM lamps turned on, looking like golden arches. I've talked about other meanings applied to these electric lamps in my other video essay, one of them being Jimmy's electric attitude towards the law. In this particular scene, these lamps represent that morally flexible attitude, along with the wealth Jimmy and Kim are trying to obtain, the corruptive means they're using, and the decay that's been engulfing Howard as a result. Not to mention, these lamps were featured very prominently in one of Howard's final scenes with Chuck. I expand upon that in another video essay. Not only are these gold-emitting lamps present throughout the climax of the con against Howard, but that style of lighting fully envelops him in his final scene at Kim's apartment. The apartment is lit by warm yellow lighting, which appears gold-like or campfire-esque, and like other color choices in Howard's scenes throughout this season, we're not used to seeing him in such corrupt, decayed lighting. Even while being surrounded by his abusers and the corrupt campfire gold lighting, Howard is dressed in his signature blue color. Once again, the color symbolism demonstrates that Howard maintains stability/safety within himself, even while finding himself in corrupt, unfair circumstances, as signified by the yellow, gold, and even red in his environments. After confronting Jimmy and Kim directly and standing tall despite what they did to him, an unexpected guest shows up. Lalo Salamanca. Wanting to scare Kim and Jimmy and also get rid of a witness, Lalo pulls out his gun and silencer. And this is the culmination of Howard's arc, being so immersed in stability and safety that he couldn't comprehend just how corrupt and dangerous Jimmy and Kim had truly become. Thinking he can talk Lalo down, Howard begins to say, "There's no need to hurt them," before he's shot instantly, unintentionally sacrificing himself to appease Lalo, who has come back partially because he suspects Jimmy of knowing about Nacho being a traitor. Hey, look at that, an indirect narrative connection between Nacho and Howard. Unfortunately, that is the tragic end of Howard's arc, murdered right after having his reputation ruined. Although he died for nothing other than being fucked over by the wrong people and confronting them at the wrong time, he maintained dignity and enough integrity to try and actually de-escalate what he thought was a deadly situation for his former colleagues. He always maintained loyalty to HHM and the people associated with HHM. Howard Hamlin lived an existence of stability/safety as represented by his blue wardrobe throughout the series. Even when experiencing grief as represented by his change to black suits, he still got back to his baby blue through his own commitment to getting better. And that is an unintentional Walter White reference. But he ended up a tragic victim of moral corruption, as seen in all the yellow, gold, and red surrounding him until his very last moment. Howard went from blue to black to gold and ending in the red, quite literally. But not by his own intentions, but by the corrupt intentions of Jimmy and Kim, who Howard tried to protect till his dying breath. Howard broke good after Chuck's death, but Jimmy and Kim took that hard-earned goodness and projected onto it as an opportunity to break bad. Color symbolism is a huge storytelling device in Better Call Saul and in Breaking Bad, with I think many different ways to interpret what the color of each character's wardrobe and the colors used in the general atmosphere mean. It's really astonishing to me how much Nacho and Howard's arcs mirrored each other, especially after paying careful attention to the colors associated with their characters and the worlds they operate in. Although Nacho and Howard are both tragic characters, something good does come from Nacho's intentional sacrifice. His father was in the red danger zone, and Nacho got him into the blue safety zone. Nothing good immediately comes from Howard's unintentional sacrifice as a victim of Lalo. In fact, Kim and Jimmy are never the same again, with Jimmy planting himself fully in the red danger zone as Saul Goodman after the trauma. However, Kim eventually confesses to Cheryl Hamlin, and I like to think Howard's reputation was somewhat restored in spite of the damage done years before. At the bare minimum, Cheryl has closure about what was really happening with Howard during that time. While Nacho and Howard's arcs mirror each other as well-meaning people caught in the middle of a feud that ends up destroying them over the long term, certainly the different way their arcs play out are exemplified by the change in colors. Nacho was a victim of his own choices, starting out as the bad guy and then wanting to change to save the man who raised him. Howard was a victim of his circumstances, starting out as the well-meaning yet misunderstood stiff lawyer, and then transforming into a better, clearer version of himself who just wanted to do right by his father's law firm and the people associated with it. The color of Nacho's clothes changed in his final arc, since he came to regret his choices, while the color of Howard's environments changed in his final arc, since he was put into circumstances outside his control. I guess you could say Nacho eventually realized he was in the Breaking Bad universe and wanted to get out, and Howard didn't realize he was in the Breaking Bad universe until circumstances snuck up on him. So the next time you're watching a scene with Nacho or Howard, pay attention to what they're wearing, or what any of the characters are wearing for that matter. You might be able to tell where that character is and where they're going to end up. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the use of color in Better Call Saul, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And if you feel like it, why not become a channel member or a patron? See you soon, and take care.